Look, every new developer makes mistakes. At least I know that I did. But the truth no one told me is this. Some mistakes will hold your career back, and some you absolutely have to make if you want to grow into a real engineer. For me, it took breaking something in production right before a
Uh-oh.
release to finally get it. So in this video, I want to walk you through the 5 technical mistakes almost every new developer makes. The ones that slow you down, the ones that hurt, and the ones that end up making you dangerous in a good way. I'm talking about moments that cost the company, stole weekends with my family, and fundamentally changed how I write code. So if you're early in your journey, a bootcamp grad, self-taught, or trying to break into your first role, these are the things you want to know now. So let's get into it. When I graduated from my bootcamp, I did what almost every new dev does, followed more tutorials instead of building. Now I was technically learning, but the thing is, you eventually hit a wall. You realize tutorials aren't preparing you for real world problems. For me, that shift happened when I built something small that actually mattered, a website for my brother-in-law's photography business. Now it wasn't the prettiest thing, but it worked and forced me to learn what something that had real stakes to it. More importantly, I realized that never moving beyond tutorials meant I wasn't getting any closer to a job that would support my family the way I wanted. That's when you stop thinking like a student and start thinking like an engineer, because real projects teach responsibility. So build something someone actually uses and your confidence will grow much faster than it would following any course. Now this is the mistake that got me the most embarrassed early in my career. Have you ever Googled an error and suddenly you find the perfect solution on Stack Overflow? No? Well, that was me. I would Google a solution, grab the first thing that looked right, paste it, change some names around and pray all goes well. Now don't get me wrong, you can get away with this for a while until something breaks or someone says, walk me through what this code is doing, and suddenly your heart spikes because you can't. This is where I learned one of the most painful but necessary lessons. Understanding is slow, but debugging ignorance is slower. Copying and pasting is fine when you're learning. But at work, it becomes your quicksand. You spend much more time fixing what you pasted than learning how to solve the problem in the first place. And this ties directly into the next mistake. Every developer says this at least once. The code works just fine on my machine. I've said it and you probably have too, but let me tell you where this gets dangerous. Production. One night, right before a code freeze for a production release, I was working on a last minute ticket. I tested my changes locally, everything looked fine. I pushed it to staging, everything still looks fine. There were maybe a few one-off issues in my opinion, nothing to be concerned with though. So it made it into the release, and finally it was deployed into production. Real users, real traffic, real scale. Suddenly, this thing that wasn't something to be concerned with started failing at 1 out of every 5 interactions. A 20% failure rate in production. Your code doesn't truly exist until it's running at scale. What looks like a harmless edge case at small volume becomes an outage when you multiply it by thousands of users, and the mistake wasn't writing buggy code. Anyone could do that. The mistake here was not testing it in the conditions it was meant for and ignoring those one-off issues. The worst thing is having to tell my daughter I can't get her to sleep tonight because I have to be on a triage call for a defect I introduced. The ultimate cost of untested code isn't a server error, it's stolen family time. Testing isn't a checkbox, it's insurance for your personal life. It's about proving your code works and revealing the ways it doesn't. Here's one that sneaks up on you. As a new developer, you tend to write code for right now. This works, this passes the test, this fixes the defect. But then a few months later, when you have to make a change there, you'll look at that same code and wonder, who wrote this mess? And then you realize it was you. You wrote this mess. But now here's a situation that became a turning point for me. I wrote some code that I was so proud of. I thought it was clever and it used the shortest syntax possible. I then asked another developer, why can't we just write code this way? Because it's shorter. His response became the lesson that changed everything. And it was sometimes the shortest code isn't the best if it makes things more difficult for the people who will come behind you. This simple response taught me that being clever isn't always necessary. Maintainability is the true sign of a professional. If someone else can't understand your code in 5 minutes, you didn't finish the job. Clean code reduces bugs, makes onboarding easier, and it makes collaboration possible. It even makes it easier. Listen, if you're following me on this journey and my mistakes are saving you time and frustration, or maybe you can relate, I need you to do one thing for me right now. Hit the like button. That's it. That little click tells the algorithm this is actually useful and not just a random talking head. Help me get this blueprint to the next developer who's stuck. Now let's get back to it. When I first started, I was terrified of everything. Breaking things, merging code, even touching the database. But guess what? It all happened anyway. When you're learning, you're kind of in a silo. You're not dealing with real consequences. But real engineering is all about controlled failure. It's literally the job. You learn to use Git not just as a version control, but as your safety net. Commit often, break things in branches, revert fearlessly, and treat failure as your feedback. We all remember Facebook's old model, right? Move fast and break things. That worked for their use case, but could you imagine if more critical companies did that? I mean, think of the recent Cloudflare and CrowdStrike outages. Or what if big banks operated that way and suddenly you couldn't access your money? These types of apps don't have the luxury of deploying multiple times in a day. Their deployment cycles are slow and methodical because the stakes are too high. The core difference here is risk management. You can move fast when the cost of failure is a refresh button, otherwise, you have to move methodically. Real engineers master controlled failure because they're responsible for stability. The mistake isn't failing, it's being afraid to fail at all, so you never take on complexity, never take on ownership, and never get out of the junior mindset. Failure is a feature of the job, not a flaw in your ability. So, those are the 5 mistakes, and honestly, the 5 mistakes that helped shape me into a better engineer. Now, if you got value from this, make sure you stick around because the next video builds directly on this one. And trust me, if you're trying to break into tech right now, you'll need it. Now, before you go, let me know in the comments, which of these 5 mistakes did you make and how did you learn from it? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.